for 2018 proves our effectiveness as a development partner, placing people at the center of our work and leveraging partnerships and cooperation to transform policy imperatives into action. With an eye on the rapidly changing global context, SETI is innovating to constructively address the emerging challenges and opportunities for the region. As part of our competitiveness program, SETI is designing precise tools to assess assets and capabilities in the productive sector to determine paths towards higher value goods and services. As our flagship program for partnerships, the Americas Competitiveness Exchange on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the OAS, will continue to leverage good practices and the power of networks to increase trade and investment in the region.
For us, the role of the OAS is very important, connecting countries, connecting governments and private sector, and letting us know what other countries are doing it and how we can replicate that in our countries to enhance development.
For me, who has come here to look at how can we develop our own ecosystem, our own innovation hubs, our own accelerators, I think seeing this, touching, feeling it, seeing the transformation, seeing how quickly you made it happen, is a testament to what is possible. So I believe all of us leave here stronger than ever.
The Working Group of Experts on Subnational Competitiveness, the GTEX, is our gateway program to promote local economic competitiveness policies alongside municipal and state-level governments, together with the private sector and academia.
Este tipo de reuniones te sirven para darte cuenta de todo lo que se está viviendo en América Latina sobre los temas de competitividad. Y hoy justamente en este sector estamos viendo sobre todo los temas de innovación tecnológica. Los que si hablamos de competitividad tenemos que hablar de tecnología. Y me está ayudando mucho para abrir el panorama de ver lo que están haciendo otras ciudades y lo que podemos llegar a aplicar también nosotros en México.
The Hub on the Transfer and Commercialization of Technology is connecting and strengthening national innovation ecosystems in the region. Each edition of the Hub trains budding technology entrepreneurs from the region's public and private sectors to take promising products and services from idea to market.
¿Por qué es importante que estemos juntos en esto? Porque la región tiene que estar unida y me parece que hay mucho conocimiento en la región que todavía no está explotado comercialmente como podría ser, y esta es la mejor manera de hacerlo.
Tenemos la proyección de cada año generar y compartir nuevas experiencias entre aquellos que contribuyen a la innovación. Queremos cambiar el cómo lo hemos estado haciendo en Latinoamérica. Queremos generar la unión de los países, queremos colaborar.
Our virtual platform on technology foresight, Prospecta Americas, will support OAS member states in identifying and mapping future trends and technological development of critical importance for the Americas.
Este esfuerzo, el cual viene siendo apoyado por la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nos permitirá tener una gran información para poder mapear estas iniciativas de innovación y poder que ellas contribuyan al crecimiento económico, a la competitividad y al bienestar de nuestras naciones.
Como bien sabemos, nos encontramos ya en la cuarta revolución industrial, la que está cambiando rápidamente la forma en que se hace negocios, se produce, se consume y se genera bienestar y entretenimiento en el mundo. Es la mayor amenaza, tal vez la mejor oportunidad que tenemos en nuestras naciones.
The Inter-American Teacher Education Network, the I-10, is working to improve the quality of teachers with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In 2019, the I-10 launched the first STEM Teacher Fellowship of the Americas. The Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, is working with governments in the Caribbean to advance electric mobility and clean transport as the sub-region pursues energy independence. Under our Integrated Water Resources Management Program, SETI is responding to the demand of member states for platforms and applications that enable data-driven policies. In the Central American region, for example, we're expanding the scope of Costa Rica's Plataforma Interactiva de Aplicación del Clima Tropical. This tool captures and disseminates real-time climate and water data, promoting resilient agriculture. The Inter-American Committee on Ports is building human and institutional capacity through public-private partnerships to address port modernization, logistics, and security. CooperaNet, SETI's multi-stakeholder platform for cooperation and partnerships, is being relaunched in 2019, responding to member states' call for a more robust hub for cooperation. In a region where 8 out of 10 consumers begin or end their shopping process online, SETI has entered into a partnership with the private sector.
Es una herramienta que sin duda acerca a las MIPYMES hacia la demanda que hoy está migrando a Internet, y con eso pretendemos mejorar las ventas y el posicionamiento de las empresas pequeñas.
As we look to the future, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development will continue to leverage cooperation and partnerships to expand our reach, proving that together we are much more than the sum of our 34 member states.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática.
We will now complete the testing phase, and I will proceed to read the list of those countries that have connected and done the audio and the video tests for the meeting this afternoon. Present, we have Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominica, El Salvador, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Dominican Republic, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Suriname, Uruguay, and Venezuela. We have quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary General Mendez. And good afternoon, distinguished permanent representatives and alternate representatives. We've already had a long day. I'm afraid it's about to get longer. I apologize for that, but the business of the organization awaits our attention, and that, of course, is why we are all here. But thank you very much for coming this afternoon. Now, before proceeding with the order of business, I wish to take the opportunity to express on our collective behalf deepest condolences to the people and government of Peru for the horrendous terrorist attack that claimed the lives of men and women in the valley of the rivers of Apurimac, Ene, and Matero. On behalf of the Council, I express our solidarity with the families of the victims and our very strong condemnation of this heinous terrorist act. On a more pleasant and celebratory note, on behalf of the Permanent Council, I also wish to convey our congratulations to the governments and people of Argentina and Guyana for the celebrations of their Independence Days yesterday, May 25th, in the case of Argentina, and in the case of Guyana, today, May 26th.
Fernando, ¿se desconectó el presidente?
No, otra vez sí. Ambassador, could you please request the floor?
I have no idea why that
he's back.
keeps happening.
Yeah, I know that you are
Anyway,
talking
if
and
I
yes,
may, I don't know where I was, so I'll continue as if I go back to where I was. I wanted to say that on a more pleasant and celebratory note, on behalf of the Permanent Council, I convey our congratulations to the governments and people of Argentina and Guyana on the celebrations of their national days. Argentina yesterday, May 25th, and Guyana today, May 26th. And I wanted to say to the ambassadors that my only regret, and I'm sure I speak for the Council as a whole, is that we cannot mark these two occasions with our usual good spirits, both in lively company and with excellent wine and rum. Now, if I may, I'll turn to some housekeeping matters. Given our financial constraints, I make an earnest appeal to delegations to make efficient and effective use of the time and resources available to us this afternoon. In this connection, I plead with delegations to limit interventions to a maximum of 5 to 7 minutes, in keeping with the agreed guidelines approved by this Council last June. I need hardly tell you that finances are tight and we need to act in a responsible fashion. I thank you all in advance for your cooperation on this matter. I now turn formally to declare open this regular meeting of the Permanent Council, convened to consider the items contained in the order of business, document CP/OD 2321/21, which I submit for the Council's consideration. And if I hear no objections, we will proceed to adopt it without amendment. I see no request for the floor, therefore I assume there is no objection, and I declare this order of business adopted. Thank you. Now, the next item is the presentation of the annual report of the Board of External Auditors to the Permanent Council for the years ended December 31st, 2020 and 2019, distributed as document CP Doc 5700/21. The chair of the board, Mr. Martin Rubenstein, will deliver a very brief summary of the report that was distributed already to delegations and which the chair assumes we have all read. Mr. Rubenstein, sir, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon. I'll just quickly test to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Sure, thank you. Well, good afternoon. And as introduced, my name is Martin Rubenstein, and I'm the chair of the Board of External Auditors. I just wanted to briefly take this opportunity to introduce my fellow board members. Ms. Joan Lugo is the newest member. Ms. Lugo is the Managing Director of Global Financial Operations at the U.S. Department of State. And I would also like to introduce Mr. Dean Evanson, the Director of Audit with the Government of Antigua and Barbuda. On behalf of my colleagues, I am pleased to present the board's annual report very briefly on the external audits of the accounts and financial statements of the OAS in accordance with the OAS general standards. The board received full access to all information that we requested, and we acknowledge the full cooperation extended to the board by all levels of the organization's personnel throughout the course of our work. This is an important nuance that I always like to state because it's very important to have that participation. I would also like to acknowledge the continued impact, as we're experiencing, of the COVID-19 pandemic and that it's had an impact on the OAS as well as the efforts of the member states in managing during these challenging times. Very briefly, the findings of our report this year. BDO USA conducted the audits of the 2020 financial statements for all OAS entities, with the exception of the Retirement and Pension Fund, which will come later this year. And they issued an unmodified opinion on all the funds and entities that it audited. During the course of the audit, BDO did report 3 deficiencies in internal controls regarding the timing of the preparation of bank reconciliations in certain missions, the timing of registration of a few fixed assets, and the organization's liquidity issue. These issues have been communicated to appropriate officials within the OAS, and the board not only suggests that actions be taken to address these issues, but is confident that management will. One of the objectives of the board is to contribute to the greater efficiency and effectiveness and economy of the affairs of the OAS. During 2020, pandemic aside, we noted continued strides forward in the management of the OAS's resources, its planning capabilities, its infrastructure management, and the operations of the Office of the Inspector General. The board does note, however, that the OAS's regular fund had a deficit balance of $15.5 million as of December 31st, 2020, which was up considerably from 2019. This shortfall was due to an extraordinarily high level of unpaid quotas. The economic hardships created by the pandemic has contributed to a higher volume of member states being unable to pay quotas on a timely basis. In fact, more member states are currently past due than ever before. While targeted steps have been taken to reduce the annual budget allocation in both 2020 and 2021, the board remains concerned with the organization's liquidity position because the day-to-day cash flow requirements of the OAS have only been met by way of short-term borrowing from the Treasury Fund. In fact, the OAS anticipates several temporary loans will be required during the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2021 to cash manage salary and operational expenses. While there are strong controls to forecast and manage the cash flow of the organization, it is becoming more evident to the board that this type of cash management is not sustainable and is taking a heavy toll on the operations of the OAS. For instance, due to the uncertainty of its cash flow position, employees that retire or otherwise leave the OAS are not replaced, not in all cases, in some cases, are not replaced, creating a significant imbalance in several directorates' ability to be efficient and effective. Over the past few years, the board has continuously highlighted basic programmatic and administrative management expenditures that have remained unfunded. While the board appreciates that the pandemic has created certain uncertainties for member states, the pandemic has also created uncertainty and risk to the OAS. In order to position the OAS for sustainable success, we have made certain recommendations, and we understand that this budgetary imbalance is being considered under the new comprehensive strategic plan and ongoing budgetary cycles. While the board acknowledges that member states have taken certain measures to limit budgetary excess, the board stresses that targeted action must be considered and taken to reduce, for example, to reduce the number of mandates, and in addition, also recommends that expenditures associated with the operations of the OAS be strategically reviewed with the intent on streamlining certain expenditures, such as its real property footprint, and while investing in others, such as digital transformation. In conclusion, and on behalf of the board, I would once again congratulate you and the OAS on very productive and fiscally responsible 2020. We obviously wish good fortune for a productive and healthy 2021, and I remain available to answer any questions that members might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein. That was a very sobering presentation, sir. And I can assure you that both the General Secretariat and member states will take very careful note of the findings that your board has, what your board has found, and also the recommendations that you've made. But I'd like to offer the floor to any delegations that may wish to comment in more detail on the report that you've just presented. So I open the floor to delegations, and I see a request, first of all, from the Ambassador of Guyana, Dr. Riyad Incinati. Dr. Incinati, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have asked for the floor in my capacity as Chair of the OAS Retirement and Pension Committee and the Permanent Council's representative on the OAS Retirement and Pension Fund. And my purpose for asking for the floor is to offer clarification with regard to a reference on page 14 of the 2020 audit report presented by Mr. Rubenstein, which says, I quote, "The board was disappointed to learn that the engagement letter with the independent public accounting firm Mitchell & Titus LLP for the audit of the Retirement and Pension Fund as of December 31st, 2020 had not been signed prior to the meeting of the board of the external auditors. Internal management issues regarding approval of the budget for this fund, combined with personnel turnover, contributed to the significant delay in commencing the 2020 audit. This delay will result in the audit not being completed in time for the publication of the OAS's annual financial report." And the report goes on to say further, "The board recommends the Secretary General ensure the budget for the Retirement and Pension Fund is approved early in the calendar year to enable the audit of the Retirement and Pension Fund to be completed in a timely manner." Chair, I have written to Mr. Rubenstein in my capacity as chair of the committee. This letter was sent only yesterday, I'm afraid, but we know that the letter was received, but we received no acknowledgement of the letter or any comment on the contents of the letter, for which purpose I feel it necessary to apprise the Permanent Council of the reasons for the delay in presenting the results of the external audit of the Retirement and Pension Fund to the board. First of all, 2020 was a very challenging year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected many aspects of the normal operations of the fund, its office, and the committee. Everybody knows about these challenges, and I need not go into them in great length. But suffice to say that additional time had to be taken to identify and implement solutions for resolving the challenges we faced. Second, although our external auditors and the staff of the Office of the Secretary Treasurer of the fund strive to work in the most efficient and effective way, it has always been difficult for our fund to complete the audit within the deadlines imposed for its inclusion in the report of the external auditors to the Permanent Council. There are several reasons for this. For one, the audits of the General Secretariat and its entities do not require specialized external auditors. The audit of the Retirement and Pension Fund does. That is the reason we hire external auditors who have ample experience in auditing pension funds for our audit. Our audit is not as simple and routine as those of the General Secretariat and other OAS entities. It requires the auditors to have a solid understanding of actuarial assumptions and the variety of investments that we make. It also requires knowledge and appreciation of how life expectancies, assumptions about future inflation, and generational mortality tables affect a proper and realistic assessment of the fund's liabilities. Our experience in the past has taught us that auditors hired by the General Secretariat, while very good in what they do for the General Secretariat, perhaps do not quite understand the specialized knowledge necessary to provide an accurate, meaningful, and useful audit of our fund. Moreover, unlike the General Secretariat's audit, our fund requires inputs, or the audit for our fund requires inputs from a multiplicity of banks, brokerage houses, and consultants. Each has its own calendar and time frame for providing financial information. Thus, obtaining from them the data necessary for completing the audit every year is a race against the clock and an additional challenge. This is something that the General Secretariat and other OAS entities do not have to confront. As an aside, Mr. Chairman, many years ago, in order to facilitate compliance with the deadlines, the committee allowed the auditors to use actuarial information that was based on the September 30th data of the year being audited. Under that practice, however, the September 30th actuarial and year-end financial data were out of phase, thereby producing misleading results. To rectify that problem, the committee decided more than 10 years ago to use year-end actuarial data. But because the data are not available until well into the year, the audit is performed, it has become even more difficult to complete the audit within the established deadlines. In addition, this year we had some issues in getting the budget of the Office of the Secretary-Treasurer approved on time. One of the reasons was that we have to confirm figures from service providers, our investment advisors, our auditors, and our actuaries. The confirmation process took longer than it normally does because of the pandemic. After that, contracts had to be drafted, reviewed by legal advisors on both sides, and signed in order to get to the point where work would start. The budget was approved almost immediately after the Secretary-Treasurer met with the assistance of the Board of External Auditors, and a few days later, on March 26, 2021, the letter of engagement was signed. The official external audit commenced on that date. But long before then, the Office of the Secretary-Treasurer had begun the preparation and organization of all information pertinent to the audit that was available prior to that date. The Secretary-Treasurer told the board that he was willing to talk to the Board of External Auditors to explain the reasons for the delay, but he was told that that was not necessary. Once the budget for the office was approved, it was possible to negotiate the agreement with the actuaries and begin the updated valuation study needed to complete the external audit. Our actuarial consultants have notified us that they should have this data by mid-June. We therefore expect to have the external audit finished by the end of June or beginning of July. May I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that the recommendations regarding the presentations of the fund's audit should be directed to the chair of the committee, not the Secretary General. The Secretary General is just one of the 3 voting members who make up the committee. The others are a representative elected by the fund's participants and a representative elected by the Permanent Council, who serves as committee chair, that is, myself. The committee is an organ of the OAS separate and apart from the Office of the Secretary General. And because it must operate as an independent board of trustees under the pension plan and applicable law, that is the way it has to be. Mr. Chairman, forgive me for going on at length, but I felt it necessary to bring this to the attention of the Council in the interest of transparency and accountability and for the record. I would be happy to make the letter to Mr. Rubenstein available to the Permanent Council to be entered into the record, and I would be happy to provide further information if so required. I would agree that no one is happy with delays in meeting established deadlines, but I submit on behalf of my committee and on behalf of the Office of the Secretary-Treasurer of the Fund that the word disappointed in the first paragraph of the letter of the report is unduly harsh and unfair. It suggests that the Office of the Treasurer and the Committee have been remiss in their duties and does not take into account the unique and taxing circumstances under which the Committee, its staff, and its providers have had to work during the 2020-2021 pandemic. Nor does it take into account the special requirements of the fund audit, which, as I have emphasized, are markedly different from and more complicated than those required for completion of the audits for the General Secretariat and other entities covered by the report of the Board of External Auditors. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tzanali, for that very comprehensive explanation and statement. I might ask if you would please make the statement available to the Secretariat for distribution to member states, because I'm sure that we would all like to have sight of it. And I encourage you to write to Mr. Rubenstein, as you had indicated. I am sure that with discussion, these issues, which are clearly can be resolved, a common ground can be reached. Now, I'd like to continue by offering the, just to say, Mr. Rubenstein, that I will come back to you at the end of all of this so that you may give us the benefit of any comments that you might have. But in the meantime, I'd like to give the floor to the distinguished Ambassador of Brazil, Fernando Simas. Ambassador Simas, you have the floor.
Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, firstly, I would like to recollect the words of congratulations that were made by Brazil in the last session of the Permanent Council with regard to the Board of Auditors. I don't want to repeat those words here, those remarks, but I do take note of this report as another example of the high quality services that the board provides to the organization. Objectively, also, I'd like to highlight this at my last opportunity to speak substantively to this topic within the organization, the warning that has been put forward by the board in terms of the mandates and the means that the OAS effectively has available to it. It is certainly an ongoing challenge, and of course the challenges have been expanded in that regard as a result of the pandemic. But it is important that we should all hesitate before engaging in expenditures and be active in contributing to the OAS funds. Given the 2018 quotas that have been approved and all of the member states and all of the fees, of course, applied, while they, even if they remain at the current level of funding, we continue to see issues. Therefore, we are experiencing, indeed, difficult times here at the Permanent Mission of Brazil. I have had the pleasure of noting the tremendous consensus of the delegations to install this system of audit, but it is also important that the organization overcome its financial crisis in a reasonable fashion. And perhaps the most recent of these crises, of course, was in 2016, but they are ongoing. The favorable administration since 2017 is evident. Through 2016, certainly conditions were much more difficult. The assets in the regular fund that have been presented certainly go beyond the loans, and it is possible to calculate today that the debt, if it hasn't been fully done away with, it will be significantly less at the end of this year than it was last year. Chair, if we look at these forecasts, which are relatively optimistic, if we look at the situation of the crisis that continues, the benefits are still very much tenuous. And we must continue to rely on contributions from other states. We can also see that the OAS must grapple with the short-term challenges in cash flow. And in fact, we have taken the necessary steps for the short term. And we need to continue down this course of action, even if these demands and these calls for the national governments to contribute more to the organization, we continue to face challenges, and we must therefore prioritize our mandates that will have the biggest impact and ensure real results for contributing states. It is important for us all to respect this process in the understanding that the worst crisis has been prior to 2020, and the examples of countries will need to continue to pay the fees and quotas, obviously within the context and the ability of each country to pay. A recent experience shows that it is only our efforts to be able to allow for integrity of the OAS and transparency. The OAS will also lead to financial equilibrium within the organization, and particularly in terms of the short-term cash flow. In this regard, we want to note what the board has said, that this is in a constructive process. We should continue to see and to make the organization more resilient and better poised to fulfill its mandate. Thank you. From the interpreters, sound at origin was very low. We've done our best.
Trent, the interpreters did have some difficulty interpreting all that you said. And you just apologize for the fact that sound coming from your end was a little low, but they did try their best, and I think we got the gist of what you said. And it was a very important statement. We thank you for it. And now I will ask the Ambassador of Canada to take the floor. Ambassador Adset.
Chair, good afternoon, colleagues. It's a pleasure to see you and the Secretary General and the Assistant Secretary General as well. And Mr. Rubenstein, thank you. Thank you for your presentation this afternoon. And I hope my colleagues will do, Chair, as you suggested, which is read the report and read it closely. It's an important report, an important document, and Canada supports the work of the Board of External Auditors and its critical role in ensuring the independent oversight of the Organization of American States. I'd like to welcome the constructive recommendations the board has made. We certainly firmly believe that we need to continue working on implementation of the recommendations that have been made. Thanks to some past board guidance, efforts by member states and the Secretariat, we've made significant progress on a number of the financial and management issues, but as always, there's more yet to be done. I'd like, as CAP Chair, to express how pleased I am to note that work's underway to address the board's recommendations to align mandates and priorities of the organization, including the establishment of a framework to assess and approve new mandates. This organization currently has over 700 mandates on its books, which spread OAS human and financial resources too thin and make it challenging to focus and to deliver results. Canada believes that member states' mandates should be costed and linked to priorities before they're agreed, so that we can ensure that they're implemented and treated with the seriousness that they deserve. I'm going to say a few more words in French to give the interpreters a few seconds to switch. Conformément aux recommandations du Conseil,
pursuant to recommendations from the Council, CAP has been looking at the indirect cost recovery issue and direct cost as pointed out in the report. The studies that have been carried out, we believe, will serve to modernize our mechanisms for the recovery of indirect costs, and this will certainly bolster the OAS in the implementation of the mandates that it hopes to put into practice with voluntary contributions. It will therefore put the OAS in a more competitive position on the international sphere and bolster a more transparent and a more precise expenditure for the organization. Finally, Canada shares the concern of the Council as regards the insufficient recovery rooted in contributions, and we can only exhort member states to do what they possibly can to pay up on time. Thank you, Chair. As always, Canada very much supports the work of the board here, and we will continue to defend the most practical way forward for the OAS and more effective. That is our hope. Thank you.
Ambassador Edsett. Now I'd like to offer the floor to the Ambassador of Mexico. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As we have said repeatedly, for Mexico, the review of accounts, the efficiency and the efficacy of these exercises in terms of how we use our public expenditure is of the essence. We know that the OAS, of course, depends on the contributions that comes from our citizens, and we need to do better in terms of managing those resources. The financial situation of us all, members of this organization, certainly have been a challenge. That is the very least we can say over this past financial year. With COVID, Mexico places enormous importance on the work of the external board as one of the means to ensure that the follow-up on our expenditure is clear. And we're very pleased to have Mr. Martin Rubenstein with us today, his professionalism and that of all his team. Thank you very much indeed. The reports that have been submitted underscore the need to pinpoint and to correct such actions of the organization that erode its viability in any way. And that, of course, should prompt us member states to take a very close look at these points. Let me, for my part, just very quickly point out some issues that Mexico would wish to flag on the basis of reports that we have. The regular fund has very high liability, and that, as we have seen, in fact shows the greatest arrears in the history of the U.S. Lack of liquidity, the inability to be able to draw on the treasury funds, and an unsustainable situation in the medium term, as is evident. Given the external situation, Mexico has done what it has could to set up more rational, more practical management practices here, and we can only hope that all of us and the OAS will be able to draw on the arrears as soon as possible. So we certainly echo the appeal we've already heard today for members in arrears to please do what they can to resolve the issue. Looking forward, we hope that 2022 will present a more realistic picture and progress. But given this financial picture, we must say that we are concerned that the budget doesn't fully reflect the complexity of the financial administration, the lack of financing, the lack of sufficient precision as to the mandates, the plethora of mandates, needless to say, we think should push us to take another very hard look at the administrative structure. On the other hand, an effort to achieve greater containment as we prepare for the next General Assembly, we think is of the essence, so that there isn't yet again a rush to come up with n number of additional mandates, which is the last thing we need. And so with the existing control mechanisms of the yes, and through an independent auditing committee, we think we can do more to bolster the financial accountability of the organization, and the GA will probably look at it. Mexico certainly is very active in the working group on the review of programs under the CAP, in hopes that we can put our heads together and come up with a better way to go in this audit committee, drawing on the significant pluses that the Board of External Auditors offers us, and thanks to it yet again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador of Mexico. I now give the floor to the interim representative of the United States of America, Brett Frieden. Mr. Frieden, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. The United States wishes to thank the board for their report and to express our appreciation and support for the Board of External Auditors. I would also like to commend the candid briefing provided by Mr. Rubenstein. We're, of course, particularly grateful for and proud of the contributions of Ms. Joan Lugo, who serves on the board in addition to her duties for the Department of State. External audit boards play a vital role with respect to the conduct of international organizations. As we all know, financial decisions and prudent financial management are of paramount importance, especially in the challenging budget environment we are confronting. This organization benefits from the careful work of the board, which seeks to bring forth more efficiency, effectiveness, and economy in the affairs of the OAS. Given the global pandemic, we know that there have been extra challenges in the completion of your duties, so we want to also commend the board for its dedication. The United States will continue to advocate for the respect and independence of the Board of External Auditors and the other oversight and supervisory bodies of the OAS. We look forward to working with other member state delegations to ensure implementation of your recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frieden. I see no other requests for the floor on this matter. May I just, before I return the floor to Mr. Rubenstein, who I'm sure would like to respond to some of the things that he's heard, that I think I speak for the entire board when I said, the entire council, when I say that what we have just heard is from both Mr. Rubenstein and from representatives of permanent missions here. We have great cause for concern. We are faced with a cash flow problem. We are faced with an unsustainable debt problem. For an organization to have 700 mandates with the kind of resources that we have is an unsustainable situation. There's clearly a need for us to reassess all of these things if this organization is going to survive. And I join with the urgings that have been made by other speakers before me that member states must pay up their dues. If this organization is to mean something, we cannot be mean with it. We must make sure we make our contributions. And now, Mr. Rubenstein, sir, I give you the floor again for your responses to what you've heard here.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think you summarized very eloquently the comments made here, and I fully support them. Maybe I'll just say one quick comment, and I do acknowledge the word disappointment was probably inappropriate and unduly harsh. It was not to mean to be disrespectful, so I do apologize. I am disappointed in the use of that word, and I apologize for that. I also take the point that the recommendations should be more focused at the appropriate level, so that's fair there. In the end, obviously, the retirement pension fund is a very critical and important aspect of the OAS, especially for its employees and retirees. So I think that's probably why we got caught up in some of the verbiage, if you will. So I do apologize for that, but I take the chair's point on that committee. With that, I thank you, and if there's nothing else, I will hand it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein, and please be assured of the board's support for the work that you and your team have been doing. And in the context of your team, may I recognize my own compatriot on the External Board of Auditors, Dean Evanson, whose service to the board we deeply appreciate. Thank you all very much. Now, I suggest that the Permanent Council take note of the report of the Chair of the Board of External Auditors of the OAS, Mr. Martin Rubenstein, contained in the document 5700/21 and transmitted to the General Assembly with the observations and recommendations made by member states. Having said that, I am also sure that the report will engage the attention of the CAP in the coming weeks. If there are no objections to what I've just suggested, I declare it agreed. Seeing no objections, it is so agreed. Now, colleagues, the next item on the order of business is the consideration of the terms of reference of the OAS mission to the Republic of Haiti, pursuant to the provisions of the board's resolution CP/Res 1168. Reasoned presentations made at an open-ended meeting with regional coordinators and many other delegations yesterday, Tuesday, May 25th, produced broad agreement and no objection to the proposed terms of reference, except for 3 helpful stylistic changes suggested by the alternate representative of Jamaica. Those stylistic changes have been taken into account in the document that is now before this council. Against that background, I am pleased to offer the floor to the permanent representative of Canada, Ambassador Hugh Adsett, to present the document entitled Proposed Terms of Reference, Good Office's Mission of the OAS Permanent Council to Haiti, submitted by the Permanent Mission of Canada on behalf of the delegations of Antigua and Barbuda, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Grenada, Guatemala, Panama, Peru, St. Lucia, the United States of America, and Uruguay, and distributed as document CP 5705/21 Rev 1. Ambassador Adsett, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I will only speak for a couple of minutes. I want to first start by thanking you for your introduction of this item and for your chairing yesterday of the regional coordinators group, which, as you mentioned, was open to all delegations and allowed all delegations to have an opportunity to discuss the text that is before them this afternoon. The text is broken down into 6 different sections, one that sets out the purpose and mandate of the Good Office's mission based on the resolution that was adopted in March of 2021. The second section sets out the composition of the mission, noting that it will be composed of 5 member state representatives to the OAS, having the rank of ambassador or acting ambassador, along with representative of the General Secretariat. It refers to sequence and timing, with the objective for the mission to be to take place no later than mid-June. The methodology section sets out the meetings that the mission would have, and indicates that within 2 weeks of its return, the mission will present a report containing its findings, conclusions, and recommendations to the President of the Permanent Council, with a request that it be submitted to the President of Haiti, to those local stakeholders with whom the mission will have engaged, as well as to member state delegations. There's a reference to the budget that's required for this mission, and let me take this opportunity in the Permanent Council meeting to reiterate thanks that I've given previously, but again here to thank the United States for stepping forward and making a final financial contribution to this mission, which will allow it to go ahead, and also to welcome in-kind contributions from the government of Haiti and from the OAS National Office in Haiti as well. Finally, Mr. Chair, an important point for us all, not only members of the delegation, but I think for us all, a commitment that all sanitary precautions, social distancing, mask wearing will be observed, strictly observed throughout the visit, and an intention that members of the mission will have preferably completed their COVID-19 vaccination prior to departing. With that, Mr. Chair, might I commend to the Council this proposed terms of reference for adoption, and if it is so agreed, then I think we can begin this very important work. Thank you, sir.
Before I deal with the proposition just put to us by Ambassador Adset, there was a request to speak by Luis Alvarado of Nicaragua. I will give you the floor, sir, and then I will return to Ambassador Adset's proposal. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nicaragua wishes to express its concern with regard to any decision that the board, this Permanent Council, may be taking in this regard, and anything related to the situation in Haiti. Just wanted to flag this. And any decision taking here will be closely scrutinized. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for those words. And now, if I may, I have a request from the Ambassador of Brazil, Ambassador Simas. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. And very briefly indeed, I would like to express my thanks to the delegation of Canada for having sent forth these documents, and Tigmarbuda, Chile, the whole list of the countries that he mentioned: Brazil, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, USA, Grenada, El Salvador, Peru, St. Lucia, Uruguay, etc., in this important document of the Good Office's mission to Haiti. And that, of course, as we know, drew very actively on proposals and contributions as to its content by Brazil as well as others. And we can simply hope that this mission will take place ASAP. And I know, sir, that you as chair of this board agree. And so let us hope that in the terms that have been set forth in the resolution that was first adopted last March 17th, we can indeed move forward, and the necessary provisions will be taken so that we can assist Haiti in looking at its electoral situation and others. We're very grateful to the government of Haiti for being open to receiving this good offices mission, and it certainly shows the openness of the government of Haiti and its people to do what it needs to do to ensure that the coming elections are fair, just, and democratic. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Ambassador Simas. Now, we've had 14 countries submit this resolution, and we've just heard from Ambassador Adset a request that we accept the terms of reference supported by the distinguished ambassador of Brazil. I would put it to the floor that I would regard it as accepted unless somebody makes an objection. If I see no objection, I would proceed to accept on behalf of the Council the terms of reference. I see the distinguished ambassador of Nicaragua has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us reiterate our concern with regard to this issue and any other question that the board except Permanent Council may take with regard to the situation in Haiti. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would put the question again, having heard Mr. Distinguished Representative of Nicaragua. We have 14 delegations that have submitted this document. We have a suggestion from the Ambassador of Canada, supported by the Ambassador of Brazil, that we accept the terms of reference that are before us, and that is the question I'm putting before the Council. If I hear nothing further, no objection, I will proceed to rule that it is accepted. I so rule the terms of reference are accepted. Now, before I go on this,
excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you have another request for the floor from Nicaragua.
To the same point again, sir, or is this a new item?
Sí, presidente. Lo que pasa es que no escuché en el ruling decir de que.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. I am speaking to the same point, but I wasn't sure when I heard your ruling on the decision that you were also including the atención, the term in Spanish is the concern, the interpreter is rendering this, from Nicaragua.
I did say, with all due respect, Mr. Alvarado, that the concerns that you expressed would be noted. There is nothing further that I can do than that. You can take whatever action you wish to, footnote this, send a message to the Secretariat, anything that is within your right to do. But I must put the question to the board, to the Council as a whole, for the Council decision. I hope you understand and appreciate the Chair's position on this matter. So again, I will Mr. Alvarado, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would ask then that there be a footnote expressing this concern and the position of Nicaragua. The interpreter does wish to point out the sound is very poor.
Mr. Alvarado, the interpreters pointed out that the sound is very poor. But as I understand it, from her interpretation, what you wish is to put a footnote to any decision that is made here. Is that correct, sir? Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General Mendez, could you help me with my interpretation of what the distinguished representative of Nicaragua wanted correct? That he wanted to put a footnote to whatever decision the council makes here?
That is correct, sir, but he's asking for the floor again.
Okay. Mr. Alvarado, you have the floor, sir.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to delay the work of this permanent council. What I would wish is that the position of Nicaragua indeed be reflected in a footnote. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Be assured, Mr. Alvarado, that your right to have Nicaragua's position footnoted is taken fully into account, and I assure you that it will be done. Now I put the question again to the council. Do we accept the terms of reference as proposed by 14 delegations, articulated here by Ambassador Atzet and supported by the Ambassador of Brazil? If I hear no or see no objection, I am going to regard that as agreed. And I see no objection, so the matter is agreed. Thank you all very much indeed. Now, I would like to move on now, if I may, from the proposed terms of reference to the actual composition of the Good Office's mission. With respect to the provisions of the terms of reference that we have just approved, and turning now to the composition of the Good Office's mission, based on willingness to serve expressed by member permanent missions of this council and statements made at yesterday's informal open-ended meeting, the chair recognizes, first, that the members of the mission are representatives of permanent missions to the OAS who have indicated a willingness to participate in the mission with the authorization of their respective governments. And second, as was clearly agreed at yesterday's informal open-ended meeting, while individual members of the mission come from regional groups, they will act in their personal capacities, and at no time will they represent the interests of any other member states of their regional groups. In this regard, I now announce the proposed names of the members of the Good Office's mission to the Republic of Haiti, with the understanding that these are persons at ambassadorial level or the equivalent who have the authorization of their governments and that they are undertaking this in their personal capacities, and they do not represent the interests of any other member states of their regional groups. The members of that Good Office's mission, in alphabetical order of their countries, are Ambassador Hugh Atzet, Permanent Representative of Canada, Ambassador Alejandra Solano, the Permanent Representative of Costa Rica, Ambassador Carlos Hativa, the Permanent Representative of Ecuador, Ambassador Luan Gilchrist, Permanent Representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Bradley A. Frieden, the Interim Permanent Representative of the United States. Unless there are any objections, the composition of the team will be so agreed, with thanks to each of its members for their willingness to undertake this most important task at a very difficult time in the history of Haiti, a founding member of this organization. If I hear no objection, I will regard this as agreed. I hear no objection, and therefore the composition of the team is agreed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the next item on the order of business is the presentation of the report of the chair of the Style Committee of the 50th regular session.
Sorry, Chairman. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a request for the floor from Haiti?
Ambassador Bushit Edmond, you have the floor, sir.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, the delegation of Haiti warmly greets and pleased to hear this decision that the Permanent Council has just taken, favorable to the Good Office's mission to be sent to the Republic of Haiti, and wishes to express its great satisfaction at this decision to send the members to Haiti to support dialogue in my country in representation of the Permanent Council. We are also pleased with the actual composition of this Good Office's mission, and we have no doubt that their work will serve to further buttress the long-standing tradition of excellent relations between my country and the OAS. The individual competency and qualities of the members of this mission are in and of themselves quite impressive, and serves, I see it this way, as a guarantee that the mission will prove successful in meeting the objectives that the Permanent Council is setting for them. So let me, on behalf of my country, express our very deep appreciation to each of the members who have accepted to be part of this Good Office's mission, jointly and severally. Many, many thanks to each of them, and indeed to the Permanent Council itself. Now, in terms of how this decision actually implements the resolution taken by the Permanent Council on March 17th, on the 28th of April, as you know, the president of my country did send a missive to the Secretary General in which it was stated that Haiti was very much open and eager to receive a mission to come to us and to look closely at all aspects of our national life in order to see how we could put our heads together and move towards a more peaceful and a more productive construct. Now, as we know, divergences of views, which can be more or less heated, which can become more or less disruptive, only underscores the need for dialogue. And surely our attention to the importance of dialogue, how much we need to protect it in our respective democracies, it becomes ever more evident. And that is why the Republic of Haiti is so pleased to receive this Good Office's mission to our country, expressed in that resolution taken March 17th. And I don't think it is going too far to state that the Haitian mission, which I am honored to head, has also, for all of those reasons, done everything it could to contribute to the work that brings us to this happy day in which we can support this by acclamation. Chair, the government of the Republic of Haiti will ever offer a warm hand to all members of Haitian society so that anyone that can participate in our political life can do so and make a difference to how we move forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, members of this delegation of the OAS, who will join us in Haiti soon, I say again to you, to each of you, and to you collectively, how very much we appreciate your mission, how laudable it is, and to tell you that Haitian society has high hopes for the success of this mission that might bring us to a political agreement, a joining of the minds so that we can decide how we need to move forward as it was looked at by the provisional directory over this 2021 period that will lead us to elections. We continue to believe in dialogue. It can be and it is tough, but dialogue is of the essence, and we are absolutely convinced that it will lead us to a prosperous and a peaceful Haiti. Thank you.
Assurance from that your government will be welcoming this mission. The second assurance that your government is interested in promoting a dialogue with all the participants in Haiti and with the OAS mission, and also for welcoming the mission in the manner that you have. I thank you very much on behalf of the Council. Now, colleagues, the next item on the order of business is the presentation of the report of the Chair of the Style Committee of the 50th regular session of the General Assembly, which has been distributed as document 5703/21. I am pleased to offer the floor to the chairman of the committee, the alternate representative of Colombia, Mr. Gustavo Paredes. Mr. Paredes, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colombia, in its position as chair of the Style Committee of the 50th regular session of the General Assembly, submits for the consideration of the member states the report of the work done pursuant to Article 28 of the Rules of the Procedure of the General Assembly and the instructions given in 2020 to this, the virtual meeting on October 16, 2020, and it is composed of the United States for English, Brazil for Portuguese, Canada for French, and Colombia for the Spanish language. This was the composition of the committee. For the scope of the mandate, we operated virtually and openly, and we met on the 10th, 11th, and 12th, 17th, and 19th of May last, again open to all delegations in an effort to correct the defects of form and ensure equivalency among the versions in the official language in the declaration and the 17 resolutions approved by and adopted by the General Assembly at its last session, with the exceptions of 2548 and 2949. We did not identify any defects of form that we were unable to correct that would require the participation of the Permanent Council. Let me take advantage of the opportunity to highlight the work done by the language section and the Office of the Permanent Council in this regard based on the most recent communication that the chair has received from the Language Services Department and the Conference Services Department of the Secretariat. The texts reviewed by the committee will be published by June 18th, 2021 at the latest. The chair of the committee would like to note its gratitude to each and every one of the delegations that participated in reviewing the documents. as well as to personnel from the Technical Secretariat for supporting us in this effort. Thank you very much, Chair.
Redis, thank you very much for that presentation, with apologies from me if I'm mispronouncing your name, which I probably am. But let me thank you for your hard work and for the work of the Style Committee in completing it as you have done. Now, I'd like to offer the floor to any delegations that may wish to offer comments on that report. I see no request for the floor, which clearly means, Mr. Paredes, that you did an excellent and comprehensive job of convincing us all. I now, therefore, suggest that the report made by the chair of the Style Committee of the 50th regular session of the General Assembly, as contained in document CP Doc 5703, be agreed, and it is so agreed. Thank you all very much. The next item on the order of business is consideration of resolution CJI/Res 266, entitled Updated Principles on Privacy and Protection of Personal Data with Annotations. We have the report of the Inter-American Juridical Committee on the topic, transmitted to the Permanent Council by note from the Director of the Department of International Law. It was distributed as document CP/INF 8927/21. Now, if there are no objections, I suggest that the resolution and the report, which were both approved by the Inter-American Juridical Committee at its 98th regular session, be sent to the Committee of Juridical and Political Affairs with the recommendation that they be analyzed and considered by the said committee for transmission and subsequent approval by the General Assembly at its next regular session. Before I put that to the Council as a whole, I have a request for the floor from Mexico. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't know if it is timely to speak to this topic at this point. It is on this topic, but I'm not sure whether I should speak now or when you conclude your introduction.
I didn't quite understand that.
I'm not sure whether you should give me the floor now or whether we should wait until you've completed the introduction of the topic, as I do wish to speak to it. Perhaps you could conclude your introductory remarks and I will request the floor again.
Ambassador, I was just about to ask for what I had said to be agreed, which was that we would send the report and the resolution to the committee for transmission to the
From the interpreter, we have lost audio from the chair.
Sí, salió de pantalla ahora. Ya está de nuevo.
I have no idea how that happened. It's the same technical glitch again. I don't know if the ambassador of Mexico heard what I said, but basically, Ambassador, what I was saying is, I am quite happy for you to proceed to speak on this matter now before I put my suggestion to the Permanent Council for agreement. So I do please invite you to speak to the issue now.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mexico is very pleased to see the completion of the mandate given to it by 2018 to update the principles on privacy and protection of personal data that was subsequently approved in 2019. The compliance of this mandate reflects the responsibility with which our rapporteurs take on their responsibilities ad honorem. I particularly recognize the work of the rapporteur, Mexican Mariano Salazar Albornoz, who has worked very hard on this mandate. The updating of the principles of privacy and protection of personal data by the Inter-American Juridical Committee put our hemisphere in step with the most recent international developments in this regard. We recognize the work that has been done by the rapporteurship in engaging in consultations not only with the member states, but also with national and international entities of like mind to draft a document that, having been adopted unanimously by the committee, is a core piece of writing. Certainly, the annotated document will be of tremendous use for the states that wish to update their own regulations in this regard, as well as those who are just beginning their legislative process in this regard. It is fundamental that the International Law Department undertake activities to disseminate this text, as has been requested by the committee in its resolution, to ensure the development and expansion of the protection of privacy and data. Chair, the mandate established by the General Assembly for the Inter-American Juridical Committee on this topic of particular saliency and urgency in our region has been fulfilled. We call upon the member states to do our best and therefore to fulfill it, and therefore we support the idea and the motion of submitting these texts to the General Assembly for approval as the first phase to move forward on inter-American standards in this regard. From the interpreter, sounded origin was fluctuating and wanting. The ambassador would do well to acquire a microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. If anything, you have strengthened by that excellent contribution the suggestion I was about to make. But I have a request for the floor from the alternate representative of Colombia. The floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. De nuevo, Colombia saluda como un hecho especial.
Thank you very much. Colombia recognizes the tremendous work done by the Inter-American Juridical Committee to bring to successful fruition the mandate of the General Assembly in the updating of the principles on privacy and protection of personal data. The principles, of course, reflect certain concepts expressed throughout the region, including, of course, privacy and the free flow of information that are in the Pact of San Jose, as well as the Inter-American Convention on the Rights of Man. It's also a useful tool for the member states in our efforts to create a system that safeguards the rights of individuals and protects their personal data, as well as self-determination with regard to their development. All of this within the context of transparency. Individuals should have the capability and the ability to know where their information is going, what it is being used for, and the specific purposes the timing, the changes, as well as the access that may be granted to such personal data. In this framework, Colombia, through the Superintendency of Commerce, has worked actively in forwarding the work product requested during the discussions by the committee, and we thank the Inter-American Juridical Committee for the efforts unfurled to update these principles. We'd also like to note that we trust that these contributions will continue to serve the member states based on their own unique features. And we also look forward to a future inter-American dialogue on the different approaches and points upon which we all dovetail on this topic, which of course is of the utmost importance given the greater reliance on the virtual environment today with its benefits and of course the consequent difficulties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paredes, for that very helpful contribution. So at the end of all of that, may I again make the suggestion, without any objection, that the resolution CJI Res 266, Updated Principles of Privacy and Protection on Personal Data with Annotations, together with the report, be sent to the Committee of Juridical and Political Affairs with the recommendation that the recommendations be analyzed and considered by that committee for transmission and subsequent approval by the General Assembly at its next regular session. Without objection, and I see none, there's a request for the floor. Excuse me. Mexico, you've asked for the floor, you have it.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. To support you, perhaps it's not time for a decision at this juncture, but given the progress made on this topic, it would not necessarily need to go to the CAJP, but we could simply add a paragraph to the omnibus resolution, and on that basis, go directly to the General Assembly. I'm just submitting that to consideration. Again, we don't necessarily need to decide it at this time, but certainly we could move forward in that fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Fine. I don't want us to spend a great deal of time on this topic. I think the suggestion from the distinguished Ambassador of Mexico was helpful, and I asked the Assistant Secretary General for his advice on whether we can proceed as she suggested.
Mr. Chairman, every member state has the right to submit what they deem important to the General Assembly, and if Mexico thinks it can be done by a group of states, it can be done.
Is there anybody who would object to the suggestion by the distinguished Ambassador of Mexico? Because if I do not see any, I will advise that we should proceed on that basis. I see none. So, Assistant Secretary General, will you try to oversee that procedure as suggested by the distinguished Ambassador of Mexico, which would make all of our work a lot easier. Thank you very much. So agreed. Let us now proceed to the next item on our order of business, which is the adoption of the following minutes. Each of them is preceded with the letters ACTA. I will not repeat the letters every time. I will simply call out the numbers. 2139 of the special meeting held on January 24th, 2018. 2140 of the special meeting held on January 25th, 2018. 2141 of the special meeting held on January 31st, 2018. 2142 of the regular meeting held on February 14th, 2018. 2143 of the special meeting held on February 20th, 2018. 2145 of the special meeting held on February 23rd, 2018. 2146 of the regular meeting held on March 7, 2018, 2147 of the joint meeting with CD held on March 19, 2018. If there are no comments, I would like to propose that we proceed with their approval. I see no request for the floor. I therefore assume that we are all in agreement, and so it is approved. The next item on the agenda refers to the commemoration of the International Day for Families. This important matter was submitted by the Permanent Mission of Brazil on behalf of the delegations of Chile, Colombia, El Salvador, Ecuador, Guatemala, Venezuela, and St. Lucia. The document is CP/INF 8976/21. And I'm very pleased to offer the floor to Dr. Angela Gandra, the National Secretary for Family Affairs of the Ministry of Women, Family, and Human Rights of Brazil. Dr. Gandra, welcome to you. You have the floor.
Dr. Gandra asks the technician, could you please ask for the floor yet again? We cannot hear Dr. Gandra at this point. It's the blue button at the bottom of your screen to the right. Got it. Thank you. And good afternoon. Greetings, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be speaking in Portuguese. I hope that works. And what I wanted to do is to celebrate with you the International Day for Families, which we have put forward very much in our ministry on women and families and human rights, and the adoption of pro-family policies. What does this mean? It means anything that goes to strengthening family ties, broadly speaking. And what we've been doing is to focus on public policy frameworks that are very much focused on the child and childhood within the family. Just this week, we were looking at a very sad set of issues, sexual abuse, abuse in the families, need I tell you. And all of this pushes us to understand how critical it is that we, all of us, whatever our position, get a better grasp of as to how these things happen and how we can move better to protect the family from the state, most especially taking up policies that will educate us all better and understand more clearly what our respective roles should be vis-a-vis children. And we are focused on this bluntly because as we look at the up-and-coming generations, we understand that the child, whether it be by society, by the family, or by school, but that the child be, I should say, by state or by school, but most especially begin to be properly cared for and nurtured, being the key word, at home in his or her family. And so any policy that strengthens family ties, we think, is a good thing. And we are promoting this in innumerable townships here in Brazil, generating different gatherings and awareness meetings where parents understand better what their role can be and how they can be more active in the school context. And that means, of course, schools understanding the importance of bringing the family in, and how children are faring in school, how they are adapting, what possible issues are there, what alerts are there, what signals are we missing. It's all that kind of thing. And we're also working to fine-tune our educational systems, yet again with an emphasis on bringing the family in. It isn't a stone wall between the family on the one side and schools on the other. We firmly believe that parents need to play a more active role, and they must be welcomed so to do. Because after all, from day one of the child's life, it's the parents that are the number one protagonists and educators in that child's life. Much of our emphasis then up to now has been on early childhood, but of course we take it from there into later childhood and adolescence. Too often in the past, there has been a insufficient dialogue, and especially these days in the pandemic context, you have parents glued to their screens for various reasons, and that doesn't mean that meanwhile the kids are in fact properly cared for. And so, needless to say, you can imagine we work very closely hand in glove with child psychologists and so forth. But the emphasis I'm making here is how we can work better to familiarize children with technology, but not forgetting the mental health dimension to this. I mentioned earlier the grim issue of abuse. Well, that, of course, is a constant concern. We have abundant material, ladies and gentlemen, should you be interested in tapping into it, and we would be so happy to share it. We're also, still within the context of technology, working on what we can possibly do to generate better family relations, the classic family dinner. There needs to be attention paid and value put upon moments in which families actually get together. It's a time for each member of the family to listen to the others. And there we underscore also an intelligent, read into that prudent, read into that wise use of technology. You don't want people sitting around a table with everybody glommed into their respective iPhones or other. So the idea is to bring the parents in to see how they can better understand and broaden the context with which they understand their respective role. At the same time, we want children to better understand their role. This is a very much an intergenerational approach, as you might gather from what I'm saying. We want children to be more aware of their respective circumstances, of their respective histories. People aren't carbon copies one of the other. Now, what we see is that it's essential that we strengthen the basis for these policies. Here in Brazil, very often, even well-meaning policies tend to be kind of negative in the approach. It's more of what you cannot do, what you should not do, thou shalt not, etc., and so forth. We want to put the emphasis on something more positive. And let me say here how important it is to allow fathers and mothers and whomsoever is caring for young children the family leave that is essential to strengthen those ties. And love in the family is the best thing we can do, but love needs to be given safely. Thank you.
That was an excellent presentation, very informative. Thank you. Now I give the floor to Ligia Brice, the executive director of the Association La Familia Importa of Guatemala. You have the floor.
I'd like to greet the distinguished Permanent Council and appreciate this opportunity that is being given me. In celebrating International Day for Families, we could not possibly let the opportunity go without underscoring what the family does, even though the person who preceded me, Dr. Angela Gandra, did a wonderful job of pretty much saying everything. But we emphasize the fact that everyone is involved, whatever the age, newborns, and everyone else involved with them, their tutors, their caretakers, all with a view of helping them move forward, of ensuring that the protection of children and of the family isn't just an individual citizen's responsibility. It is and should be properly the role of the state. When we understand when we understand that human rights must include a prioritization of the defense of the family, as established in the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. This pandemic, if it has served for anything in particular, has certainly underscored how critical the family is. It seems like an unnecessary tautology, but it is not. It is only in the family that the most basic needs, the most intrinsic needs of human beings can be satisfied. The family stepped in to offer virtual education. The family stepped in when the hospitals were overwhelmed and when families had to become a form of hospital, caring for their sick at home. And despite the fact that governments would like to help everybody, the help is ever wanting. But what I'm trying to say here, bottom line, very often, and in a moment of great difficulty, the family steps in and steps up. That's my bottom line. And so we think it is quite fitting that we should speak of celebrating the International Day for Families. Favorable public policies towards families should be considered an invaluable asset to us all, so that children as yet unborn and those who are with us have the best chance possible to flourish. Everyone will benefit. Family harmony also will do a very great deal in the first days and months and years of life to defend the full cycle of life from the prenatal stage through different stages of childhood. We need to see children as rights worthy. Children up to 2 years of age, protection of family leave, as has been mentioned, the setting up of guardianship, of creches, places where mothers can nurse their babies. There's so many, I wouldn't begin to try to list the array of elements that are pro-family. And sad to say, many countries, when they look, for instance, at the average number of hours that people work, don't understand that if you spend too much time at work, you are losing out at home. That's how that goes. Boys and girls need their parents. There should be increased attention to practice that promotes this kind of a healthy family environment, and so people on the job have more time to rest, more time to go home sooner. Boys, girls, adolescents would then benefit from their caregivers or from their mothers or fathers. Bottom line, we would like to see international organizations, including your own, pay more attention to the role of the family and how the family can be buttressed in that respect. Clearly, I mean, it's a given that in a healthy and in a loving environment, kids will grow up better, healthier. The family should be, in a way, a school not only for human rights, but human obligations. It is the first and most important school. Let us protect it. There is where our most important legacy to the coming generations will be sown and nurtured. Before I leave you, I'd like to say that the organization I present here, Asociación La Familia Importa, which means Family Matters, stands with you to assist in any way. And thanks so much for your attention today.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Breeze. I can assure you that your passion for this subject was very well communicated to us all. And as busy diplomats, we understand sometimes we neglect family because of our job. It was a timely reminder. I thank you very much for it. And I thank the panelists for all that they have said, and I invite delegations who may wish to comment or make comments of their own. Thank you. I've got a long list. And before I start on this list, I just want to remind everyone of the admonition I made at the beginning of this meeting. And that is, please stick to 7 minutes. And if you can be shorter than that, it would be most welcome. We've had a long day and we've still got a long agenda to go. I give the floor now to the distinguished ambassador of Mexico. You have the floor, Ambassador.
I will be brief, but I hope I will be substantive. Mexico appreciates the fact that this issue has been included on our agenda today precisely to put the family in a pride of place. As you know, back in 1989, when the International Year of the Family was promulgated in the UN, it became an important focus for us. And later on, as we have picked this up in cycles, we understand how important it is to understand better how the family influences us in every respect. There have been resolutions drawn up at the UN to that effect. As the family exists and flourishes in varying different political and social contexts, Mexico celebrates diversity, even families that include one parent, families that are constructed in various different ways. There could be same-sex families. There could be families constituted by any number of different respects. There is no single pattern for a family. And we believe that our cultural and juridical constructs should properly adapt to society as the latter evolves, and so that all human rights are enjoyed by all persons. Mexico, therefore, embraces the position of the UN that has said repeatedly that it is the family that occupies the primary role and exercises the premier leadership in caring for the family, both for material reasons and immaterial reasons, tangible and intangible. This is critical to social cohesion. Policies, therefore, that focus on the family have a critical role to play, and the state has an equally critical role to track how those policies are in fact being implemented. Stereotypes knee-jerk violence, and so many other prejudices in and outside of the family needs to be called out for what they are. Public policies then, particularly focusing on the family, need to be sure that their basic premise is human rights, gender focus, the superior rights of the child, the rights of persons with disabilities, and so many other particular groups that have, for various reasons, vulnerabilities or have suffered historically from discrimination. We need an intercultural and an intersectional approach, as many of us have been looking at and promoting for so long. The OAS has done much in that regard, rooted in its human rights agenda, but at a time when the entire world is bending over backwards to get out of this pandemic in one piece, we need also to see how, in so doing, we can work for more rights for more people. And so that we better understand that for a healthy family, all of the different aspects of the labor market, including unemployment, of course, will have a tremendous effect on our children, particularly on the younger children. So Mexico believes, Chair, and this is my point, we need to take a cross-sectional view of all of this. This is what will make the 2030 agenda sustainable. And it isn't that you work on one aspect to the detriment of another. There has to be a forward march across the board. That is what will make a difference in terms of reducing poverty and improving the quality of life of our people. Thank you.
Rivas, you were true to your word, both brief and substantive. Now I offer the floor to the distinguished representative of Costa Rica.
Thank you, Chair, and a very good afternoon to each and every delegation. We're very grateful for this proposal to include in our order of business the question of the International Day for Families. Much appreciate also the contribution of Dr. Angela Gandra, National Secretary for Family Affairs of the Ministry of Women for Family and Human Rights in Brazil, and also the statement we've just heard from Ms. Lidia Breeze, Executive Director of the Asociación La Familia Importa, Family Matters in Guatemala. Both were very, very valuable statements. We can only concur. We have got to focus on our families based on our respect for human rights, and most especially given the challenges we are all facing today, which each of these speakers highlighted. The bottom line is that we need to show more solidarity. The times demand it. The multiple aspects and challenges that we have faced through this pandemic have highlighted the fact, as has done the UN, the role of technology in every respect, you name it, education, work, communication in general, and in every one of these spheres, not least in education. Costa Rica has taken up the cudgels of basic elements to bolster early learning and to aim for equity and justice with a human rights approach and free of any kind of discrimination and violence. This is the education that we wish to promote. And that focus looks to promote comprehensive education and to promote a culture of peace. Costa Rica is determined to fight mistreatment and violence, to boost the respect for human rights of persons who are not of age, so that each of the rights that they have a right to demand may be recognized and protected.